Welcome to the second and final episode of this prog story, where I talk about the best prog band ever. Hi, my name is Johan Stensland, and thank you so much for your interest and support after I released part 1 of this story. If you haven't checked that one out yet, part 1, you probably should, because this is a continuing story and there should be like a card here somewhere. So let's continue the story of the best prog band ever. Chapter 3. Let's talk about appearances, because they do count. Not everything is core substance. You also have to dress your product up to create the whole package. But what was classic prog all about? What were the mandatory attributes? Well, there was the Taurus bass pedals. Our bass player spent about a month's salary on a brand new Moog Taurus. This was on top of his already impressive rig, which included a separate amplifier for that typical distorted prog bass guitar. Another essential piece was the mellotron, with its characteristic string and choir sounds. But this was back in the early 80s. The most advanced synth we could afford was the Korg Poly6. It did the strings just fine. The choirs, though, not so much. So we tweaked that poor Poly6 for hours, trying to squeeze out the best possible mellotron choir sound. And it sounded, well, so-so. What else? Well, we kind of made the policy decision to double everything. Our heroes, Genesis, they sported 2 large drum kits on stage, and we matched that. For our long, pompous instrumental passages, we had one of us play in unison with the main drummer on a second kit. What about the light rig? Well, most of the local bands, they didn't bother. If the venue had a light rig, which was not always the case, the band just flipped the on switch and started playing. The more professional bands, they rented a light rig with 16 pieces of what was called the Par 64 can. So what did we do? We doubled it. We rented a rig of 32 Par 64s and had a dedicated light guy who studied our entire repertoire and set the light to reflect the changes of the music. The PA? We didn't rent the best PA we could find. We rented 2 of them. And thus, we had 2 stacks on each side of the stage. We also had a dedicated mixer guy, of course. And some stages at some venues, they were simply too small to accommodate us. And guess what? We had our own carpenter who went to work with hammer and nails and extended the stage, sometimes to double the area. Smoke? You guessed it. We had 2 smoke machines. Now, you might say, stop it already, Johan. We want to know about the music. Did you actually play something? Or was Shake Ahmed just a silly version of the Emperor's New Clothes? Here's the thing. We worked our asses off. I wrote hour-long repertoires, often complex and advanced, and we often rehearsed 4 times a week for hours. We put everything into our project. And we were damned if we're just gonna undersell it in a half-baked package. Because appearances do count, and we wanted to give us the best possible chance to succeed. If we didn't believe in what we did, if we didn't believe in my music, then we never would have gone through all that trouble to promote it and create a professional package. We all believed in the myth, the magic, and the possibilities of Sheikh Ahmed. We looked at ourselves as professionals. We took ourselves extremely seriously. This was our lives, our passion. Nobody was going to take that away from us. Looking back, I'm unsure where the guys in the band got their strength and their willingness to push on through the years. I had my reasons. I still suffered from my tough childhood and still had that urge to show the world that I was somebody, that I was not that little sad, lonely boy anymore. But the others? What kept them going? What kept them believing? I don't know. But they followed me, believed in me, and in the magic they heard in my music. And for that, I owe them.
Man on the moon, crawling around. No one believes me, but I know what I found. I can feel them in the daytime, I can see them in the night. Their evil plans are shown to me, it's all very clear and bright.
Chapter 4. At the end of the rainbow, there's a pot of progressive gold. And the end of the rainbow lies in the city of Uppsala in Sweden. There must be something in the water, because Uppsala has produced progressive bands like Kaipa, Samla Mammas Mamma, Manticore, Hasse Fröberg Musical Companion, and the Flower Kings. And Sheikh Ahmed. To put things in perspective, let's look at the timeline. So let's start a long time ago. Samla Mammas Mamma, they started their career back in 1969. I was like 6 years old. Kaipa appeared in 1973, and they're still going strong. That's kind of fantastic, I think. Sheikh Ahmed, 1981, that's when we started. The Flower Kings, 1993, that's when they started. And then we have Hasse Fröberg Musical Companion, started 2010. And the funny thing is that some people say that HFMC, they sound a bit like we sounded like back in the 80s. I don't know if that's really true. I can't judge that, but I think it's interesting. On top of the progressive music, these bands had another thing in common. Across the board, there are a multitude of professional, highly educated, classically trained musicians. The exception to this is Sheikh Ahmed. None of us were educated or classically trained. None of us could be mistaken for a virtuoso. We were just a bunch of guys who could play a little. However, that didn't stop us. I wrote the best music I could, and the band worked their ass off to try to do the songs justice. And we did bring something new to the table. There are people who say I was a pioneer, that I was the first to create that brutal mix of classical prog elements and heavily distorted rhythm guitars. I have no idea. But there was something about Sheikh Ahmed that was special. That I know. So, what did Sheikh Ahmed actually sound like? Well, all the sound snippets in this video are unfinished, in-progress versions that I'm currently working on. Unfortunately, there are no recordings from back then, which in a way adds to the mystery and enigma of Sheikh Ahmed. But even though my recordings are unfinished, I think they are good enough to give you an idea what we were up to back in the early 80s. And my plan is to finish the best of the tracks and release as an EP. Okay, so was Sheikh Ahmed the greatest prog band ever? Well, that's not the point. The point is that we tried to be. We all tried so hard to be larger, to be better and more powerful than we really were. That magic we so desperately sought, it was elusive, but seemingly always within our reach. So we kept reaching. I wrote hours and hours of music, and we worked hard year in and year out. Today, what I take away from the years in my youth with Sheikh Ahmed are the few pearls. What is left when the drugs, the conflict, and the disappointment from lack of success is chiseled away? I'm talking about the 3-4 tracks that, when I listen to them today, I still feel proud of. Those are my takeaways. The pearls. The magic.